Trump, he put this out on Truth. He said, rather than releasing the report on the rigged and stolen Georgia 2020 presidential election on Monday, my lawyers would prefer putting this, I believe, irrefutable and overwhelming evidence of election fraud and irregularities in a formal legal filing as we fight to dismiss this disgraceful indictment by publicly and campaign financing seeking DA who sadly presides over a record-breaking murder and violent crime area, Atlanta. Therefore, the news conference is no longer necessary. Now, with this post, he did something very interesting. He posted this at 8:01 on August 17th. 17 is the letter Q, and he purposely did it on 8:01. We'll be getting to that in just a sec. Karma Patriot put this out and responded to what Trump said and said, a very loud and clear, we have it all. Now, the question is, and I think a lot of people have been asking, do we have it all? Do we have it all? Yes, I do believe we do. Now, think about what Trump just did. Remember, this is an information war. The decision was left to him on what direction we go. So I want to go back to a couple of posts, and then we'll go to post 8:01 because of the timestamp. 2005, which is the post, August 30th, 2018. Has POTUS made a statement since being elected that didn't end up being proven factually true? Everything stated by POTUS will be made public. So everything is going to be made public by Trump. Post 1581, June 20th. We serve at the pleasure of the president. We left the decision on timing to him. So that's very interesting. So the decision and the timing is left to the president. Who is saying we serve at the pleasure of the president? I do believe that's the military. Post 2115. Specific timing rests with POTUS. Hints expend ammunition. So he hinted that I have this document. It's irrefutable. I want to release it. Did he do that on purpose? I do believe so. Because if we go to post 3724, this is December 18, 2019, it says, it must be done right. It must be done according to the rule of law. It must carry weight. It must be proven in the court of law. There can be no mistakes. Now, follow this post. This is very, very interesting. It says, good things sometimes take time. Attempts to slow block the inevitable justice will fail. D's election interference in 2016. Clinton Hussein illegal FISA. Did Trump catch them on the FISA, on the spying? Yes. Actually, it's been proven via Durham, via Mueller, and we can see that that has been proven that they interfered in the 2016 election. D's election interference in 2018, Mueller. D's election interference in 2020, impeachment, projection. These people are sick. We, the people, are the cure. So we had the 2016 election, the 2018 election, the 2020 election, the 2022 election, and all these elections were allowed to happen without Trump, without the military interfering in the election. The question is why? Now, Trump, he put out this truth, and he specifically picked 8:01 to put this out. Not 8 o'clock, not 8:30, but 8:01. And that points to a very specific post, and that is February 21st, 2018. It says, AG Sessions, U.S. Cyber Task Force, important. Now, if you go to justice.gov, Attorney General Sessions announces new cybersecurity task force, Tuesday, February 20th, 2018. So this was before the midterms in 2018. Let me just read a portion of this. It says, Attorney General Jeff Sessions has ordered the creation of the Justice Department's Cyber Digital Task Force, which will canvass the many ways the department is combating the global cyber threat and will also identify how federal law enforcement can more effectively accomplish its mission in the vital and evolving area. The internet has given us amazing new tools that help us work, communicate, and participate in our economy. But these tools can also be exploited by criminals, terrorists, and enemy governments. Attorney General Sessions said, at the Department of Justice, we take these threats seriously. That is why today I am ordering the creation of Cyber Digital Task Force to advise me on the most effective ways that this department can confront these threats and keep the American people safe. The Attorney General has asked the task force to prioritize its study of efforts to interfere with our elections. So do you think they went ahead and they did research and they figured out how they were cheating in the 2018 elections? Did they monitor the 2018 election? I do believe so. What else was created in 2018? Executive Order 13848. So right there, that gives you a nice picture of the beginning of them monitoring the elections. We'll be getting into Executive Order 13848 in just a sec, because remember, that was created in September 2018, right before the elections. So we had AG Sessions monitoring, and we had the executive order. So let's move to the U.S. Space Force. What is the U.S. Space Force, and what does it do? Well, the United States Space Force was established as the sixth and newest branch of the U.S. Armed Forces on December 20th, 2019, when the National Defense Authorization Act was signed into law. Before that, the United States hadn't created a new military branch since 1946. And I do believe that was the Air Force. As the United States critical infrastructure became increasingly dependent on satellites for communication, navigation, meteorology, and intelligence, the U.S. Department of Defense likewise identified a need for a branch of the military dedicated solely to operating and protecting these assets. So the Space Force was created in 2019 after the 2018 election. So the Space Force was put into position for the 2020 election. The Space Force was known, or is known, as the Guardians. That's very interesting. So we had Executive Order 13848, created in September 2018, and we had A.G. Sessions. He created this cyber task force to monitor the elections. Executive Order also monitored the elections for 2018. The Space Force was created after that to then monitor the 2020 election. So they're known as the Guardians. So let me go back to 2624 down below. It says Guardians of Intelligence. So now we have the Space Force that didn't come under the Posse Comitatus Act until 2021. So they were allowed to operate on U.S. soil, and they monitored the 2020 election. So let me go to post 4253. This is May 15, 2020, before the 2020 election. There's a link to Twitter, which is now called X, to ODNI Gov. And this post is the office of the DNI. Acting DNI Grinnell announces changes to election security briefing. So let's go to that link. Director of National Intelligence announces changes to election security briefing, May 15, 2020. Let me read a portion of this. Today, the ODNI announced that the U.S. intelligence community will lead all intelligence-based threat briefings to candidates, campaigns, and political organizations under the U.S. government's notification framework. Bill Ivanina, the director of the National Counterintelligence and Security Center, will serve as the IC's leader to this critical effort. U.S. elections are the foundation of our nation's democracy. We are committed to supporting this administration's whole of government effort to secure the 2020 elections. This change represents an important improvement and simplification to the threat notification process. The IC will continue to work in partnership with the FBI DHS to identify and integrate threat information, and Ivanina and the elections team will act swiftly to deliver the timely and thoroughly assessment to those affected by potential malicious influence. So right now, we have this that Grinnell set up. We have the Executive Order 13848. We have what A.G. Sessions set up, and we have the Space Force, all talking about the elections. They didn't say they were going to stop what was happening. They are going to monitor and report on what's happening. Because when you go to Executive Order 13848, what does it say? It says, Section 1A, not later than 45 days after the conclusion of the United States election, the Director of National Intelligence, in consultation with the heads of any appropriate executive departments and agencies, shall conduct an assessment of any information indicating that a foreign government or any person acting as an agent of or on behalf of a foreign government has acted with intent or purpose of interfering in that election. The assessment shall identify to the maximum extent ascertainable the nature of any foreign interference and any methods employed to execute it if the persons involved in the foreign government or governments that authorized, directed, sponsored, or supported it. The Director of National Intelligence shall deliver this assessment and appropriate supporting information to the President, the Secretary of State, the Secretary of the Treasury, the Secretary of Defense, Chris Miller, the Attorney General, and the Secretary of Homeland Security. Within 45 days of receiving the assessment information described in Section 1A of this order, the Attorney General and the Secretary of Homeland Security, in consultation with the heads of any other appropriate agencies, as appropriate, state and local officials, shall deliver to the President, the Secretary of State, the Secretary of the Treasury, and the Secretary of Defense a report evaluating with respect to the United States election that is the subject of assessment described in Section 1A. So that information was then delivered to all of these different agencies and the President. They didn't say they were going to stop what was happening. They said they were going to watch it, monitor it, and then report on it. That is what Trump wanted to be done. And he did it starting all the way back in 2018. So each election was built upon each other. Now, people say, well, what about the 2022 election? Who was monitoring that? Well, once again, if the military went ahead and they caught them cheating in the election, because this was during the 2020 election, they had the insurrection, the military was activated, and they took control over the country. So if they took control of the country and they caught the cheaters, is Biden the president? No, he's the resident. Who's the real president? Who's actually the commander in chief? Because we were attacked. The government was overthrown. So did Trump stop monitoring the elections? Did the military stop monitoring the elections? No, Trump is now the commander in chief. He's in control of the country. And that executive order 13848 that was supposed to expire, it was renewed every September 2021, 2022. And if you go to the government website, notice on the continuation of the national emergency with respect to foreign interference in or undermining public confidence in the United States election. Let me read it. This is September 7, 2022. On September 12, 2018, by Executive Order 13848, the President declared a national emergency pursuant to the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, 50 U.S.C. 1701, to deal with the unusual and extraordinary threat to the national security and foreign policy of the United States constituted by the threat of foreign interference in or undermining public confidence in the United States elections. So let me read a little bit further down. It says the ability of a person located in whole or in substantial part outside the United States to interfere or undermine the public confidence in the United States election, including through the unauthorized accessing of election and campaign infrastructure or the covert distribution of propaganda and disinformation, continues to pose an unusual and extraordinary threat to the national security and foreign policy of the United States. For this reason, the national emergency declared on September 12th, 2018. That's when Trump first went ahead and created this executive order and signed the executive order. Let me continue what this says. Must continue in effect beyond September 12th, 2022. Therefore, in accordance with Section 202D of the National Emergency Act, I am continuing for 1 year the national emergency declared in Executive Order 13848. Why would the resident extend this? Why wouldn't he cancel it? It makes no sense, because through this executive order, the military and all the different agencies, they were allowed to monitor the 2022 election. Did they cheat in the 2022 election? Of course they did. So Trump, from the very, very beginning, he set everything in motion to monitor and collect all of this information via all the different agencies and the military. I wonder what Trump is waving around when he says, I have a report that is irrefutable, a report that will show there's election rigging in this country. They overthrew the United States government. They overthrew the duly elected president. I have that report. What do you think it is? Do you think it's all of this? Of course it is. This is the largest sting operation. So when do you play this card? Do you do it now? Do you wait for the trial? Do you do it right before the election when people have to vote? Think about when they decided to tell everyone that the Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinformation. Was it right before people were going to vote? Absolutely. Trump, he's building this up. He's showing the people. Now the people are thinking, wait a minute, he has a document? All right, he's going to actually take that document and he's going to file it in the court system, and they're trying to stop him? This is very interesting. See, now everyone's starting to think. Some people might think, oh, he has nothing. It doesn't really matter because he already planted the seed. People are already thinking. And Trump, he's caught them in the act. All he has to do is produce it, but he needs the people to understand what election interference looks like, what a rigged election looks like. And you can see he's building upon this over and over and over. And what's very interesting is that U.S. Space Force, they created the first unit dedicated to targeting adversary satellites. Think about that for a second. Their surveillance and reconnaissance squadron was activated on August 11th at Peterson Space Force Base in Colorado. The unit is part of Space Delta 7, an element of the U.S. Space Force tasked with providing intelligence on adversary space capabilities. What are they watching for? Foreign governments to try to manipulate the elections, to try to have maybe a cyber attack or anything like that. Trump, he knows exactly what's happening. When we say patriots are in control, patriots are in control. It's not just a phrase. Think about what Trump has done here. He set it up from the very beginning. He has that document now because remember, in Executive Order 13848, every time there's an election, a report is generated. It is delivered to the president or the commander in chief. He has the information. He knows what they have done. He's bringing the people up to speed, and he wants the people to understand. And every time he mentions something like this, the deep state players feel pain. And I do believe in the end, as people see all this, Trump is going to make sure in the end that there is going to be no foreign interference. There's going to be no deep state interference in the 2024 election. The people will have their vote. The people will have their voice heard. And the deep state at that point, just like he's doing with the debates right now and going on Tucker, he's going to show the world. He's going to show everyone that the people want him. The people want the country back. And he's going to win with a landslide. Something that we've never seen before, except maybe Andrew Jackson. And the people of this country, the people of the world, are going to be shocked. Remember, the world is watching. And the world is going to see the people